As I have mentioned before, I came from terrible beginnings. A childhood full of violence, extreme poverty, hunger, anxiety, terrific fear, death, and yet here I am, living a life that is in a beautiful location in a lovely little cottage, achieving my dreams with the Grand Dames and the Jessa channel, and most importantly, in a healthy and happy marriage that has lasted now for many years. How did I do it? Well, I'll tell you how. Hey there, my name is Jessa from the Jessa channel, and I am going to talk to you about how I changed my life circumstances, and how you can too, including the mistakes I made along the way. Because that story is very long, we're going to break it up into parts. And in this part, I am going to share with you how I learned to stop forcing what I wanted to happen, which never worked, to how I aligned myself to what I wanted to have happen. As always, I'll share my real and raw story with you, in the hopes to save you from making some of the mistakes I made, and to give you hope if you are currently in a dark place. For much of my life, I wanted to be married. And one of the damaged aspects of me as a result of the childhood that I had was a raging case of love addiction. And I don't use the word addiction lightly. I mean an actual addiction. I mean need 12 steps, at least if I could have found that help when I was looking for it. This was early on when the internet was younger and way before things like Zoom. However, I wanted to be married and I wanted to have a child. And I spent much of my adult life trying to force that reality to happen. Now, if you had asked me back at the time, I would not have used the word force. I would have said something along the lines of manifesting, creating my reality, attracting into my life. And I really was trying to do those things. However, when I look back on it, I see that so much of the energy around things like the law of attraction, things like manifestation, things like even creating your own reality, at least for me, and I think many other people approaching those techniques, are really coming from a seed of uncontrolled desperation. And not just that the desperation itself is uncontrolled, you cannot control it inside yourself, but you feel no control over your own life, really. Or you don't believe, at least I didn't, that I could move towards a better life through my own gumption, through my own inner power. So what I did, many things in order to try and attract this reality into my life, this happy ending. I did everything from visualizing, doing spell work, prayer, lots of prayer, which I do firmly believe in prayer. Prayer is very powerful. However, when the seed of whatever it is that I was doing, which in this case I was, is desperation, well, I don't think there's any amount of prayer that can really overcome that if you're coming from a place of lack. Anyway, I did all of those things later on in life when The Secret came along. I watched that, So I really had a lot of techniques that I was trying and to force this reality to happen. And then I had a realization. I had this realization actually when I was driving down the street. I was still childless, still unmarried, and had been through a string of very broken hearts and very broken relationships. Now, I actually put that word relationship in big quotes. I would be more inclined to call them train wrecks that would last anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. How did I break free of that? This, I believe, is the first step to any manifestation or creation of your reality or attracting what it is you want. Any of that, which all boils down to the same thing, which is getting to the point in your life where you are living the way you want to live and having the experience you want to have. The first step, and the step that is so often missed when you read these steps on how to create your reality, was 1, tell the sterling, crystal clear, absolute truth. Now, because I was living a reality that I didn't want to be living, that truth, it hurt. However, I would not be here today if I hadn't told it. The truth for me sounded something like this. I look back on my life and I thought about all of the energy, the effort, the tears, the crying, the praying, the begging, the pleading, the manifesting, the visualizing, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I looked for what I really had for years of doing that, which by that point I'd been doing it about 10 years. Well, actually earlier than that, I'd say maybe 15. And wishing and hoping for years before that. And I looked at what I had to show for it. And the answer came that all I really had to show for it, besides a very broken heart, was a complete lack of dignity. So, once that nasty little truth that had been banging around in the jail cell of my soul had been freed, I accepted it. And there was step 2. Once I told the truth about it, looked at what I was actually living, what my reality actually was, and despite my best efforts, what it still was, and accepted it, finally, that allowed me to, over the next few years, get into alignment with where I wanted to be. Years later, many years later, I have a word for what it is I did. At the time, I just realized that I could either continue on and have no dignity, or I could accept my current present reality, have some dignity about that. Just by telling the truth, I began to feel my dignity come back. Just by accepting, I felt a sense of, okay, this is where I stand. There's something about telling the truth and accepting your reality, which is more empowering than any amount of visualization and writing things down and scripting and whatever else that you can do. Because you have taken the first step to your own personal empowerment. Because you can now do something about it. Even if that doing something is just a little shift, a little change of mind. And that brings us to step 3. Change your mind. And that's what I did as I drove. After I told the truth, I let it sink in and I accepted it. Okay, now what? Well, I changed my mind. I am no longer interested, I said to myself, in spending time with anyone, whether it be a potential marriage partner or whether it just be the neighbor down the street, who did not treat me with kindness and respect. From that moment on, I decided, changed my mind, and declared that the absolute foundation of all of my relationships from that point forward would be respect, or the relationship would not exist in my life. And that included, and here's step number 4, that included my relationship with myself. Once I got clear and made that declaration, well, you know what? I felt better. I didn't feel like tripping through the tulips, as it were, but I felt somehow inside myself a little click, in which a part of myself that had not been there before, a newly born part of myself, had just clicked into place. Now, I'm going to tell you that years later, that declaration still stands true and is a major reason why my life has the daily joy in it that it does, particularly, most importantly, in my closest and most profound relationship, my marriage. Also, I have that same profound sense of respect for each other with our son, who is my husband's son, my stepson. And then as well, I'm thinking about my best friend. He and I have a very profoundly respectful relationship for each other. And there are, in my mind now, a parade of people who are walking by. And in fact, with the exception of one, none of those people were there when I made this declaration. They came into my life as a result of that throughout the years. Anyway, step 4 was I not only changed my mind, but step 4 was I changed my relationship with myself. And once my primary relationship, which my circle number 1 relationship, was set and clear, then things started to change. By the simple declaration of what was fervently now so inside myself, said aloud and with utter truth, because of course, if you're lying to yourself, you'll know it and sense it. It just won't feel right and you won't follow through on it. Once I said that with truth, a few years later, in fact 2 actually, so a couple of years later, I met my husband. I took one look at him. That's all it took. One look. Aligning your reality is an incredibly important part of the manifestation process. Aligning your reality to the reality you want to be in. However, that's the last step in the process. All of the other steps, at least for me in my life, needed to be gone through. On that day, as I drove on that road, I needed to do those steps inside. And then I didn't have to worry about visualizing for 30 days or listening to this many subliminals. The alignment of myself to the energy I wanted to have, which was a deeply, profoundly respectful and loving relationship, happened in that moment. I didn't do anything else after that. I just lived my life, and then when he showed up, I said, "Why, hello, there you are." And that was that. Stay tuned as I give you, throughout this series, more focus, stories, and ideas from my own life on how to create the life that you will love.